I don't even really know how to start this video. I've been staring at this blank Word document trying to process what I went through with this run. This was something. Terrible and tedious in many ways, wildly viable in others. Was it good? Was it bad? I almost don't even know at this point. My mind feels completely fried from the whole experience. One thing I can say is this is by far the longest I've ever worked on a run for. I started this in July. This has been brewing in the oven for literally months. A vile, putrid meal, but yet with some small morsels of restaurant quality taste simmering beneath the surface. Maybe let me start from the beginning, and I'll see if we can make sense of this somehow. Back in July, I completed my Dark Souls 3 throwing knife only challenge run, beating the game using only damage from throwing knives, which meant I had attempted this challenge in every game in the Dark Souls trilogy. I say attempt, as Dark Souls 1 was literally impossible, but I was able to beat Dark Souls 2 and 3 under these conditions. I knew my plan was to attempt this challenge in the other games as well, and so I started looking at Demon Souls and how viable this would be. Given that this was the predecessor to Dark Souls 1, I feared I would encounter the same issues that game gave me, those being the knives having minuscule damage, no scaling, and an inability to be boosted by any buffs. And I was correct. But Demon Souls had a far worse problem, one that appeared to stop the run dead in its tracks before it even began. Normal throwing knives could only be purchased infinitely in 1.3. If you're not too familiar with Demon Souls, let me explain why that's an issue. 1.3 is the third section of the first Archstone, a section that can only be accessed once an Archdemon has been defeated. Archdemons are the final boss of each area, and you can only even attempt to fight them once you've completed the 2 areas preceding them, meaning to even get to where I can just buy normal throwing knives, you'd have to have not only beat 1.1 and 1.2, including their respective bosses, but to get past the fog between 1.2 and 1.3, you'd also have to kill at least 1 Archdemon, each of which have 2 bosses blocking the way to them. So that's a further 3 bosses minimum, bringing the total up to 5 bosses defeated just to be able to buy normal throwing knives. Given that Demon Souls only has 17 bosses total, that's like a third of the game to get through without our standard damage dealer. Now, there are also the kunai, this game's poison throwing knife equivalent, which are a little easier to get. These can be bought in 4.2, which would mean you'd have to kill just the boss of 1.1 and the boss of 4.1 to buy them. But without any way to do damage, it doesn't seem feasible to squeeze past 2 bosses out of an already small roster. I was pretty prepared to just sack off Demon Souls and say it wasn't possible. Until I discovered this on the wiki. It appears the blue-eyed knights in 1.1 can actually drop normal throwing knives. But how to kill a blue-eyed knight in the first place? Well, after some testing, I found it's possible to lure this one off the top of these stairs, thus using gravity for the kill and not wasting any precious knives. I can actually start with 10 knives by choosing the thief starting class also. Now, given the first boss, Phalanx, has a swarm of enemies surrounding it, I feel that I'm going to need as many knives as possible to actually have a shot at winning that fight. So probably the question you're asking is, what's the drop rate like for these knives? Well, the wiki says it's about 10%, and with the Providential Ring as my starting gift, this boosts it to, I think about 15%? It's not exactly clear, there's not a lot of good data on this ring for some reason. 15% doesn't sound that bad at all. I mean, we've all farmed weapons which have like a 2% drop rate, right? Well, with those weapons, once you actually get the drop and get the weapon, that's it. No more farming. Here, the knight only drops 3 knives each time, and I probably need to farm till I'm close to 99. Each run took about 2 to 3 minutes, and with the amount of knives I'd needed, and no idea how many times I'd need to do this farming run, I decided that I couldn't bring myself to sit down and do this all in one session. Plus, I wanted to make sure I had other videos to release during this time. My plan was that I would play the game 3 or 4 times a week, with each session having the goal of getting 1 knife drop. So that's what I did. Throughout this process, I gathered lots of souls, but I couldn't even spend them because you can't level up until after you beat Phalanx. At one point, I stupidly fell off the edge while holding 20,000 souls and then got stuck and killed by the enemies at the bottom trying to rescue them. I wasn't even that mad, because what was I even going to level anyway? Health, I guess? But yeah, this was my morning routine for many days in August and September, running up and down, luring this blue-eyed knight to his demise. Every 10 runs or so, he'd give me the knife drop I needed. Things were going somewhat smoothly, or as smoothly as possible at least for this ridiculous endeavour, but then at the start of September, the game decided to raise a massive middle finger at me, and for some reason, the knife drops stopped. That day, I went again and again, but the knight refused to drop any knives. I counted, and I did this run 45 times with the knight not dropping any knives. No rhyme or reason to it. Eventually, after nearly 2 hours of trying, I finally got one drop of 3 knives. Even with the infrequency of doing this, it was beginning to grate on me, and I constantly felt this run hanging over my head while I was doing other things. After getting killed again by those ganking enemies at the bottom of the stairs, I decided I wanted to at least attempt Phalanx to see what I was working with. I had 66 throwing knives at this point. First, I tried throwing a knife at one of the minions. Judging by the damage, it would take 3 knives just to kill one of the minions, which was a really bad sign given how many of them there were. My next step was to see if I could lure the minions away and then throw a knife at Phalanx's exposed body. After a lot of running around, I found an opening, and the number I saw when I threw that knife sent a chill down my spine. 9 damage. Phalanx has 1150 HP, so does that mean it's impossible? For the purpose of doing this test run, I used my starting dagger to kill enough minions to give myself a clear opening, so I could confirm 100% how much damage these knives did. This time, the knives did 18 damage each, so I must have just been too far away or hit a defended part of the body or something. With 18 damage, beating Phalanx was possible. I reloaded my save state and went in again. I should be able to do enough damage with the 66 knives I had to win. I just need to wait for the right opening so I don't miss. By running around the pillars, I was able to get behind Phalanx for a wide enough opening to get the knife throw in for the sweet 18 damage I craved. I was prepared to take this fight as slow as I needed to secure the win. But then I made a truly horrifying discovery which laid my foolish ambitions to rest. Did you see it? Watch again. That's right, Phalanx can heal itself if you go too long without attacking it. This combined with the minions surrounding it meant that it was nigh impossible. Nearly 2 months into the run at this point, I decided to make a concession. I would allow myself to kill the minions with the starting dagger, but Phalanx's HP bar would only be depleted by the throwing knives. The reason I felt this was fair to allow is if you think back to Dark Souls 1 and 3, both of them had tutorial bosses I had to kill normally thanks to not being able to access throwing knives beforehand. So this actually is less of a concession than either of those. Plus, I was already so sick of this run and I needed to make some kind of progress for my own sanity. So I took out the minions and then pelted Phalanx with knives for 3 straight minutes, and finally I defeated the first boss of Demon Souls after about 12 hours of gameplay. But guess what? We're out of knives. So you know what that means. Right now I'm feeling pretty cantankerous, so let me tell you about today's sponsor, War Thunder. As the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, you can use 2,000 plus tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships to do a lot more than 18 damage. Each has been created with insane detail, down to their individual parts for a truly immersive combat experience in thrilling PvP battles. It's free to play on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and much easier to get hold of than throwing knives in Demon Souls. Not only do these vehicles span over 100 years of development from the 1920s onwards, but they can also be customized with camouflages, historical markings anywhere on the vehicle, or 3D decorations like bushes or equipment. My favourite part is how the interactions between the air, ground and sea vehicles keep the gameplay feeling fast-paced and versatile. Variety is the spice of life after all. You can find the link for it in the description below for you to play for free on PC, Xbox or PlayStation. If you haven't played for at least 6 months, the link will let you claim a limited time large bonus pack which includes premium vehicles, a premium account, an exclusive 3D decorator, and more. So don't delay, bring down the thunder today. This time, I just went at it for nearly 2 whole days and managed to get myself up to about 70 odd knives. Painful. So painful. Now, I felt the best route was to try to get to 4-2 to buy the poison throwing knives. This meant I just needed to beat 4-1 and the adjudicator boss at the end. I checked just to be certain the merchant in 1-2 didn't sell the knives yet before I embarked on this, and sadly it did seem to be the case. I had a bunch of souls to level up, and if you can believe it, I decided to level luck to hopefully help me with future farming if I needed it. This turned out to be a very stupid decision, and I don't think it helped in the slightest in this run. So, on to 4-1. Trying to run through this level sucks. Like, really sucks. I've got a serious bone to pick with these enemies, but I've no other option but to run through. If I just had to get to the end of the level, that'd be one thing, but I need to get the copper key and free Grave Robber Blige. Getting the key wasn't too bad, as you just need to make it down this tower. Okay, I mean it still took many attempts just to get up these stairs, but the next step was making it to the cell where Blige is imprisoned. This was hell, because the cell is down this narrow corridor with 2 more skeletons. There's no way to run past them, so the only option is to lure them out and run back in, which didn't go very well. Remember, each time I fail that, I have to get past this staircase at the beginning again as well. After countless attempts, I managed to run past and open the cell, but one of the skeletons had followed me and slaughtered me before I could speak to Blige. I couldn't find anywhere online confirming as to whether I needed to speak to Blige or not for him to move to 4-2 to sell the knives, but I didn't want to take that chance. At this point, I remembered about the Thief's Ring, which probably would have made this whole process a lot easier, as it makes me less noticeable to enemies, and I really wish I'd remembered this before this whole saga, but hey. It didn't actually help that much with the beginning part, to be honest. But I think it helped me get to the cell, and I was finally able to speak to our grave robber friend, who was happy to oblige me. So now, all I needed to do was defeat Adjudicator, and I could at last purchase at least one type of throwing knife. Using the roll trick, I dropped down and got myself to Adjudicator's boss door, making myself a save state outside, of course. Thankfully, with a ranged attacking option, this fight is actually quite easy, although long. From up on this ledge, I can pelt his bird head thing with throwing knives, and he only has 2 attacks to worry about, a vertical sword slam and the tongue swipe, both of which can be avoided by just walking to the right. If there was any dispute whether I could get past this boss, I adjudicate that it is indeed possible. Finally, after a long journey, we can buy kunai, the poison throwing knives, and you know what? This actually made a massive difference. This was a game changer. I bought 58 of them to begin with. After finally leveling up health, and then getting through this horrific run back, it was time to take on the old hero. Now, because we have the Thief Ring, this fight is pretty trivial. Luckily he can be poisoned, but he has a lot of health. Poison at least shows the damage numbers here, and the damage is quite decent. One proc will do 900 damage to an enemy, although it takes about 3 minutes for it to do that. But the big difference between doing that here as opposed to in Dark Souls 1 is that with the Thief Ring, I can proc the poison and just literally stand in the corner of the room, and old hero will never attack me. During that 3 minutes, I can go and do something else without worrying and then come back to proc it again. This makes it a much less draining experience than all those Dark Souls 1 examples. This took 18 minutes, but it was 16 minutes of me being away from the controller, so seems this guy couldn't be our hero, baby. But this is just the calm before the storm. Now, Storm King, a gimmick boss designed to really be defeated with a special weapon, the Storm Ruler. As we're obviously not using that weapon, I went into this thinking this was going to be absolute hell using only the kunai. Well, to my surprise, the kunai actually trivialized the whole fight. I wouldn't go as far to say as that it was as easy as doing it with the Storm Ruler, but it wasn't a million miles away. It only takes 2 knives to poison the little ones, and that 1 proc of poison is enough to kill them outright. After killing a few, Storm King descends, and not only can the knives reach, but it takes just 5 for the poison to activate. Storm King actually has a pretty low health compared to a lot of late game bosses, so 1 round of poison actually takes off almost its whole health bar. I then just waited till it wore off, assaulted Storm King when it descended again, and once poison was up and running, I just hid in this destroyed house until it was over. I was able to show this Rider of the Storm the door. I actually can't believe how easy this was. I mean, sure it took a while, but it was pretty chill all things considered. After smashing in some more health points, it was time to take on the final boss standing in the way of buying normal throwing knives, the Tower Knight. These archer guys take just 1 kunai each to finish off, and thankfully, Tower Knight itself can be poisoned. After a few kunai to the ankles, I run up here where I'm completely safe from all Tower Knight's attacks, and I can just relax. Poison wears off, run back down, poison again, and repeat until dead. It took 3 rounds to get the job done, but the towering challenge of this run seems to have reduced dramatically. So, on to 1-3 at last. As well as being able to buy throwing knives here, there's also these assassins who drop stealth throwing daggers. You can't buy these, and to be honest, I'm not going to spend the time farming them, as I don't think they're going to make a big difference on this run anyway. After poisoning this giggling tosser and opening the shortcut, we at last get to the Dregling Merchant, where we can finally buy the normal throwing knives. I mean, it would be nice if I didn't have to run nearly 2 minutes into the level to get to him each time, but hey, this is Demon Souls. So, time to clear up the rest of the areas, starting with 2-1. With the shortcut unlocked, we can try Armor Spider. It can't be poisoned, but I think we should be able to deal enough damage with normal throwing knives. The only thing that's annoying is the Fire Sea attack, which forces us back down the tunnel, but it's not that bad. Just run back up, chuck some knives, and repeat. Okay, it seems the normal knives weren't quite enough, but luckily the low damage from the kunai was just enough to finish the job. When the knife hits that spider and it goes deep inside her, that's amore. So anyway, we stock up on more knives and head down to 2-2, where I skip most of the level just to drop down to flamelurker. This guy has some serious anger issues. I actually died to him more than any other boss so far. He has a lot of health and a lot of poison resist. Luckily, he's not immune, but it takes quite a few knives to get it to happen, and sometimes things like this occur. Yeah. Thankfully, once you do get the poison in, you can pretty easily get him to de-aggro if you're wearing the Thief's Ring, and just wait. It did take 5 procs of poison, and below 50% health he became a lot more aggressive. There were a couple of hairy moments, but finally, after an 18-minute fight, the poison finally finishes him off, his flame is doused, but more danger lurks ahead. After pumping yet more points into our health, I went to see if I could hit Dragon God with a knife from here. It didn't work out so well. But what followed next was the wildest Dragon God fight I've ever had. Now, wild and Dragon God fight are probably 2 terms you wouldn't think would ever exist in the same sentence. But here we are. So I was trying to get Dragon God to destroy the rubble himself without me having to do it. After about as many deaths as you would imagine this would cause, one of his punches seemed to break the space-time continuum and actually knock me down to the lower level, usually only accessible after you fire the first ballista. Here, Dragon God seemed to be unable to see me and thus didn't attack, but I also couldn't access the first ballista due to him not having destroyed the rubble. My only option was to punch through the other way to get to the second ballista. There was no way to get back to the start, so my only option was to fire ballista number 2. The game played the cutscene as usual, showing the first ballista bolt in his arm even though it was never fired. Weird. Dragon God now lowered himself down to the level where you normally defeat him, but instead of resting his chin on the platform, he was now swinging his head as if he was looking for me down in the lava. Here, it was actually lucky that I had a ranged weapon, or it would have been near impossible to kill him. As an extra note, I went back into the boss room afterwards to see if I could fire the first ballista, and, well, just watch. Terrific stuff. So yeah, what a ride. God tier entertainment at the very least. So 3-1 is the next stop. The Mind Flayers take just 2 kunai to poison and subsequently kill, which makes life a bit easier here. Gotta love how squidiculous the AI is here sometimes. So after some poisoning, flawless dodging, and more poisoning, we enter to take on Fool's Idol. This boss is immune to poison, and the fight was pretty long. The main issue is trying to tell which is the real one, as wasting even a single knife puts our chances of victory in danger. The real one fires a bigger magic blast than the others, but it's not always that easy to tell. This was an 18-minute fight, but not like the other 18-minute fights where I had the luxury of standing around and chilling out. You'd be a fool to be idle here. No, this was constant movement. I later in the fight realized a much easier way to tell which is the real one. Lock on, and if a health bar appears above them, it's not the real one. This would have saved me some time and aggro if I'd realised that, but anyway, we still pushed through, and using almost every knife we had, Fool's Idol gets laid to rest. Onwards and upwards, literally. 3-2 has a large brain-like creature blocking the way to the boss, so we need to kill these guys who are holding it in place with some kind of spell. Once we break both, we free it from its brain cell, and then get this nightmarish cutscene. Thankfully I don't need to go down there. But equally nightmarish are the man-eaters. Each man-eater has 2790 HP, which means I need 3 procs of poison on each man-eater to get the job done. Plus a few normal knives just to put it over the edge. But there's 2 issues. First, they have huge poison resist, maybe the highest so far. And second, they really love flying off for long periods of time. It was taking me in excess of 20 kunai to poison 1 man-eater, which simply didn't leave me with enough ammo to finish the job. If I got really good RNG and they didn't fly away, it might be possible, but it just didn't happen for me. I'm going to leave this one. If it turns out man-eaters are the only boss between me and completing the run, then I'll come back and bang my head against it some more. But here, I just couldn't seem to defeat the man-eater. So on to the last area that we haven't been to yet, 5-1. Called Valley of Defilement, which is appropriate as trying to run through here is one of the most defiling experiences I've ever had. Really, this absolutely sucks. The worst part is this bridge with enemies on either side. This section killed me more than many of the bosses in the game. This was certainly a bridge too far. But after some tedious luring, I managed to at last get to the boss of the area, the Oogie Boogie Man from Nightmare Before Christmas. As you might imagine, this guy can't be poisoned. I initially tried to fire at him from up high, but he healed himself pretty frequently while I was up here. Why does this game love bosses that heal so much? On my next go, I went down to a lower ledge and he didn't heal even once. It was a fairly similar strategy to Adjudicator, just fire knives at him from a higher platform and move to dodge its attacks. As is par for the course in this run, it was a long fight at about 11 minutes, but our knives did enough damage and eventually Leech and Chong get smoked. After a suicide run knife stock up, we push through the horror that is 5-2 to take on Dirty Colossus. This boss also can't be poisoned, but worse than that, he has colossal health, nearly 3,400, and high damage resistance. So high in fact that it's impossible. Even with 99 throwing knives and 99 poison knives, we can't do more than about 1,400 damage, not even half health. It is literally impossible. So with that, we can't actually get below the Nexus to complete the game. But we might as well try the last part of World 1 and what is considered by many as the real final boss. First up though, we've got to take on Penetrator. Fantastic name. Luckily our kunai can in fact penetrate his armor and it takes just 3 to poison him. It will take 4 procs of poison to kill him and there's nowhere we can hide to de-aggro him, but he's easy enough to run away from if we just do a loop around the arena. After 12 minutes, Penetrator does a disappearing act. After some dragon dodging, we make it to the longest lift ever, which by the way, you can't skip this lift by making a save state when it's at the top. It just makes you start back at the bottom and have to take the near minute long ride all over again. Force King Allant is generally considered the best boss in Demon Souls, and for good reason. There's no de-aggro nonsense here, and he has a tremendous amount of health. It takes about 10 kunai to proc poison, and it's going to take about 6 procs, along with throwing my normal knives to get the job done. A lot of his attacks aren't too bad to avoid, but getting caught by the 3-hit combo can be really dangerous. The big charge up explosion is your friend, as it's a safe time to chuck knives, and you interrupt the attack also. Through my truly gallant efforts, we slowly whittled the king down, and after an intense 20-minute fight, oh crap, the poison wore off. Oh my god, he was 1 knife away from death. We did it. Okay, so we couldn't beat the game, but honestly, I'm happy with what we did. Beating False King Allant is the true prize here. Mainly, I'm just relieved this run is over. This was months of pain, and it's really been hanging over me. It feels like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Oh, and look, I know there's probably going to be some smart-ass comment about using the stealth throwing daggers, so just to put that to rest, I'll show now that an extra 900 damage or so from them wouldn't have been enough to kill Dirty Colossus anyway. Here, see? Wait. No. No! 34 damage! Why is that so much more than the other knives? That's like 3 times as much as the normal ones. Why? Why? God damn it, I was free. So by that math, 99 of them alone would almost be enough to kill Dirty Curty here. But they can't be bought anywhere. You can only farm them from these guys who are about a minute plus of running to get to, and there's not really a quick way to kill them. I mean, kunai poison does the job, but it's slow, and worst of all, they don't even drop them every time. Given everything I had been through over the past couple of months with this run, the thought of having to do another miserable and tedious farm just when I thought it was over caused me to fall into a pit of despair, leaving me no choice but to crawl into my son's tent and lay face down. But, just as all hope seemed lost, suddenly a miracle occurred. As often happens when things seem darkest, a hero emerged to save this run and my sanity. This man's name was Doom Wolf, my fellow Souls YouTuber. Using his incredible ninja technique known as taking my items and then giving them back to me after I reload my save state jutsu, we quickly duplicated the stealth throwing daggers and got my quantity up to 99 on my person and 99 in storage, giving me a total of 198, the max that I could have. I just had to hope it was enough. If Doomwolf hadn't decided to help me, the run would have been over and all of this would have been for nothing. For the love of God, go right now to his latest video and comment, "You sir are a hero." There's a link in the description. With my ammo problem solved for now, my strength and willpower was restored. It was time to finish this. After getting hugged by this mind flayer with a lack of spatial awareness, the man-eaters seemed like the best bet. With our stealth throwing daggers doing 58 damage each, 99 of them alone would be sufficient to end this, but I wanted to save them as much as possible just in case. I only used just what I needed to ensure my 99 kunai could bring these boys down. It was still a long fight, clocking in at 21 minutes, but at last, Hall and Oates are out of touch and these stealth throwing daggers make my dreams. Still 58 remaining here and 99 in storage. With some more kunai bought, I could now move on to the archdemon of this area, the Old Monk. Before you ask, this is offline, I'm not facing another player. The worst part of this wasn't even the fight itself, it was this narrow stairway with enemies in it. Red Phantom Mind Flayers no less. Who the hell thought this was an acceptable idea? Give me their goddamn names. The fight itself was pretty uneventful. 2 procs of poison would be enough, and Old Monk is so slow I can walk away with no issue. He does dodge the knives from time to time, but not enough to be a real issue. After about 8 minutes of walking, our monkeying around pays off, and Old Monk dies of old age. So, just 1 Archstone remains and we're back to Dirty Colossus. We've got the damage now, but I still want to save as many of the stealth daggers as possible here, so I only start cracking them out when I've done a fair bit of damage with the normal knives. His attacks are just balls of flies, and they're pretty easy to avoid overall. This was just a lot of circling. After 12 minutes, the shadow of this Colossus no longer looms over me. The last archdemon made in Estrella was one that I hadn't really thought would be a challenge, but as usual I was blindsided by how tricky this turned out to be. You see, the wikis claim that Garl could be poisoned, but I plugged over 60 kunai into him and no poison appeared, which was very frustrating, as 1 proc of poison would probably have nearly killed him outright. I tried to see if I could bypass him by these cliffs, but I got stuck here and he beat me to death. I tried free aiming at the maiden, but this also proved fruitless. You can actually just run past Garl to attack the maiden, but this also proved useless as I got plagued and then she heals because this game loves healing bosses. Oh, and Garl comes and smashes me from behind. There's no way I'll ever do enough damage before she heals or Garl bonks me, so my only option is to kill Garl. Even my stealth throwing daggers do very little damage to him, but I found this safe spot just at the bottom of the path here. It's easy to bait his attack and then throw a knife, but it's incredibly slow. It was nearly 15 minutes of this, and I used up all but 6 of my stealth throwing daggers to get it done, but it was worth it. He dies, and this Vinland saga is over. This maiden decides to Estrella off this mortal plane in the wake of Garl's defeat, and with that, the last archdemon is defeated. The nexus opens up, and I stock up on knives one last time. The maiden in black drags us down below, and there's a big tree orifice of some kind. I wouldn't want to mess with this thing, but sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, so I just run inside his mouth for the final encounter of the game. But of course, just when I thought for the second time that this ordeal was over, Demon Souls threw one final middle finger in my face. You see, the wikis for this game I've noticed aren't particularly good, and as such, there was no information I could find about how much health or damage resistance True King Allant had. I guess maybe that makes sense as he's just so easy anyway, why would you even bother getting this information? But it turns out, This was the one situation where it really mattered. True King Allant is not only immune to poison, but has one of the highest health stats in the game, and as such, 99 kunai and 99 throwing knives were not enough to kill him. I'm not joking. Now, I had just 6 stealth throwing daggers left, and you can see clearly from the significantly higher damage they do that if I'd had 99 of them, I would have definitely killed him. But to do that, I would have had to reload my previous save state, which was before Maiden Estrella, do that whole fight again, and go through the process of duping the daggers, meaning I'd need to arrange a time with Doomwolf or someone else. And to be honest, I just couldn't face it, so you know what? I punched him to death. I don't even care. The numbers prove that beating him is possible with the knives, so the answer is yes, you can beat Demon Souls with just throwing knives. Mostly, anyway. So, through some miracle, I got to the end of this godforsaken run. Was it worth it? Probably not, but there were some high points like the Storm King fight or that game-breaking Dragon God fiasco, but most of this was tedious, especially everything leading up to getting the kunai. Do not try this run yourself. Please. Regardless, Chapter 4 of the Throwing Knife Saga is brought to a close, but as I'm sure you know, this isn't the end. But, until next time, if you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below. I've been JK Leeds. Have a good one, and see ya. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring the video. Just a reminder that you can find their link in the description below, and you can claim the large bonus pack if you haven't played for at least 6 months. Premium vehicles, premium account, and an exclusive 3D decorator await you.